Welcome, Wrench Army members. So today we are going to finish this up. I mean, for reals, we are going to finish this up. And I think I just jinxed it, but no. Good thoughts, good thoughts. Because last time we tried to put horns on this thing with regular clay. I made up some nice horns. We tried to stick it on his head and they looked good. But anytime I moved this thing, the horns just went pew. So I decided, you know what? Abort mission. And instead, let's bake up horns. That way they're hard and then we can kind of stick them in like toothpicks, which was kind of like my other idea. I'm like, if these baked horn things don't work, I can literally cut up a bunch of toothpicks, all kinds of sizes, and we can use those for horns. And once we paint them, I think they'd still look pretty good, you know? So I did a little bit of a baking, unfortunately not the cookie kind, you know? This is all the horns, people. And I see that David Beck has already joined, and he's quite dismayed, as am I, that there is no emoji for taquitos, because I love taquitos. You know, they're a great Mexican food. Although a lot of Mexican food served in US restaurants aren't really Mexican, but I'll call them Mexican because it's very delicious. So if you joined us for our very first behind the scenes stream, well, you got to see a lot of horn making. Oh yeah, behold. Behold, and a lot of glare too from the aluminum. So we tried our best to work around the glare, but I got about halfway through this pan until we took a break and we figured out the spider knees. So we prototyped a bracket that I think is gonna work. So I'm just gonna like multiply a whole bunch of them over the weekend so we're ready for Monday. And then after that, I came back and finished up the rest. And I went ahead and baked them 275 degrees for 15 minutes for up to a 1/4 inch thickness. Now I baked them an extra 5 minutes just to be sure because I'm not quite sure when they're done, you know? So I read, and I'll give you guys a much better view here. I read that a polymer clay is done when it's baked hard like this. So it's hard to the touch, but when you feel it and you squeeze it, there is a little bit of flexibility and you should be able to bend it, but it shouldn't break. It shouldn't be like brittle and break. So I'm thinking this is pretty good. I stuck it in for an extra 5 minutes just to be sure. And, you know, I don't think the dragon is going to get a ton of wear and tear. It's just there for display. You know, obviously if it hits the ground, you know, that's a different subject. So you can see some of the horns do have a little bit of black, like right here, because I kept switching back and forth from the black and the white clay, just kind of like fixing things on the dragon. So the nice thing with this clay is that a lot of brands come with a ton of different colors. So in essence, you don't have to paint anything. You can have a black dragon with white horns. There's brown, there's red. You can make eyes, you know, if you don't want to get into the painting. So with me, I didn't really care that some of them got smudged with black because we're going to paint this whole dragon, you know, because I don't got enough to do, you know? It's so funny because when we started this project, I thought that the plasma ball, that's just like the big reveal. That's like the big part of the project, you know? And I'm like, we can slap on a clay dragon. We're gonna slap it on. No, this thing ended up being like the big reveal now of the project. But once we put it together, I think when you combine the plasma ball and the dragon wizard battle scene, totally worth it. I don't know about you guys, but for me, totally worth it. So let's get to hornifying this dragon. Yeah, sounds pretty bad, and I'm sure the process is gonna be equally tedious, right? So I have all kinds of different sizes, and we can kind of pick and choose what orientation we want. So I'm going to position him so we can kind of all get a view of what's going on, so that way I don't have to like work like that. So he can go about here, right? And I'm going to bust out a new and improved side by side with Rachel cam. So let me get him in position. Just move this guy over here and he can look about like that. Yep, he can be like this. Be kind of in my way, but not 100%, you know, in my way. So we'll have him there and let's see what that looks like. And then I can always move him around. So let's combat some of this glare we're getting from the other lights that are facing me. So I'm going to turn this light on and that should give you guys a better view. I'll try not to get too many knuckle sandwiches in there for you. Maybe if I move him back just a little bit, he's getting caught up on his wires. Hold on. Let me move him. Move the wires out of the way. Maybe move them back a little bit so it doesn't blur out as much. This camera is not as sensitive, so it'll blur out a little bit more. But you can see like my fine mess there in the back, all my ladders and stuff for the house. And, you know, over up here, a little bit of, you know, what I see. So I can make sure I'm not off the screen, you know. But last time, just for a little bit of review, we went ahead and created, let me see if I got a good pointy point type of tool. We went ahead and created these flaps that I was gonna like put horns against, and you can see a bit of white here from a horn attempt that, let me see if I can kind of pick it off. Yes, excellent. There we go. From a previous horn attempt, and the horns did look good. The problem is they weren't reliable. Every time I took the bag off that I used to store this thing, the horns were all kind of bent, and I had to like position them, and I didn't want to have to do that for a whole bunch of horns. So we're gonna see how this works. And one of the things I created was kind of like those cattle we talked about, the longhorn cattle. And I'm going to see if I can hold this in front of you guys. So I made kind of a horn that looks like that. Now, honestly, it might be too big and it might not look good, you know, but I got two of them like that we can try. You know, and I think if we surround it with other horns, it might look neat. So I figure if we want to use this, we should probably try and position them first and then position the other horns around it. And I'm like trying to talk like this, like hero. I'm just gonna be kind of hidden, you know, back here. But you know, this is the start of the show of what's going on here. So I think they're kind of cool. They almost remind me a little bit of Maleficent, you know, a little bit. One seems to be a tiny bit chunkier than the other, but you know, these are horns, they're naturally occurring things, so they don't have to be super equal. So if you guys are of the same mind, I was gonna try and stick these big ones on, and for this I may have to stand up and hover over you guys, and then we can start trying to, I say maybe I'm gonna leave the teeth alone, because magically I kind of like the way they turned out, and because they're in his mouth, they're somewhat protected from like getting messed with. So I'm gonna leave them as is, and then we can work our way down, I was gonna say the dinosaur, but the dragon, and work our way down all the way to the tail. And then if we have horns left over, heck, maybe we can add some stuff to the wings too. But I figure let's get the big stuff done first. So let me see, I guess the horns would have to go like, they're like that. This one would have to go over here. So let's see if maybe I can take a large ball tool, and I'm gonna create a hole. Let me see if I can get you guys a little bit higher. I'm gonna use the ET feature of this. And you can see even more of my mess down there, but that might give you a much better view. So I switched to this because, see, I can articulate much better, and maybe you guys can kind of see what's going on a little bit better there. Hopefully I won't knock into you guys, give you guys a little space, but I think I'm going to wrap around like this, and let's see a good spot for this horn. Oh, wrong one. Right? Yeah, like that. All right. So let's kind of mock something up first, and I am totally in your way, I get that. Oh, this wire is going to be annoying. But maybe something like at that type of angle might look good. And he's poking out, but we're going to build up to the horn. So as long as we can kind of smush it in, I think we're good. So what I'm going to do, oh, the big horns, yes, the name of the cattle. So Dave reminded me that we were talking about not longhorns, big horns, unless he also means he does want to go with the big horns on the dragon. So I'm going to take it as both. I think I keep thinking of Longhorn Steakhouse. Delicious steaks. So all I'm doing is making kind of a hole, like a little divot, to have something to anchor this guy into. And then we'll build up to him. And this, I'm going to be totally up in your way for this particular horn, because there's just no good way to do this. Maybe if I go like that. And I think I'm gonna, these two are gonna be the toughest to get in. Once these are in, I'm hoping we can get the others done pretty good. There, I want it to sit slightly behind his eye. Here we go. I'm just pushing it into his head, and I know you guys can't see anything. So that's kind of staying. So what I'm gonna do is grab some of my black clay here and build up to the horn, so it's not like some random horn just kind of like coming out of his head, which makes no sense. So I'm just gonna knead this dough here, get it like nice and soft, and we'll just build that up. Kind of like the position. I'm just gonna turn him around and see how it looks from this angle. And I kind of like it coming out of the back of his eye. That's kind of cool. And in fact, I may actually leave it in this position because I think I can get to it a little bit better. And bring it closer to me. Ha ha ha. All right. So let me see if I can give you guys a better view here. There we go. All right. So I think the best thing I'm going to do is kind of create a worm like that. Something like this. And then I'm going to wrap it around the horn like so. And it's tough. Anything that's like against the castle tower is going to be real tough to do. It's not going to be super detailed, but that's okay. So I'm going to take our biggest ball tool, I guess, and let's just see what happens if we start to mush it this way. Into the skin. Nice. I'll turn him around. See, we're kind of creating an area to hold this horn, and the skin kind of folds over the horn like it normally would with like a cow or something, you know, or lizards that have horns. And I'm just going to turn him. This is kind of tough, but it's in a way that you guys can't quite see unless I do this. You can see my little control pad over there, a little bit behind the scenes of how I change the different views for you guys. And all I'm doing is just trying to see how that you can still see a seam here without changing the structure of his face. Just kind of like blending as much as I can. And it's not going to be very well blended back here. And I should probably not try too much because I'll end up ruining him. All right, so I think that's pretty well blended. And I think what I'm going to do is take a pokey tool like this and add some like skin ridges. Let me see. I'm going to use the base here to support my hand so it doesn't shake. Although I didn't have that much coffee. So I'm just going to create some natural skin ridges. There we go. That makes it look a little bit more real. And we're going to repeat what we did on this side. So I'm going to turn him like this and then maybe move you guys back. And then bring him over here and bring you guys a little bit further back. And I can probably undo this ET. Bring you guys back down here and move you guys up. So a little bit of adjusting, you know. A little bit of adjusting. And don't fall down, camera. There. It's probably the best we're gonna do for right now. And bring it down a little bit more. Get the lighting. There we go. cinematographer Rachel is at it. All right, so here's the other horn, and let's see if we can first dig a divot right behind his eye, right here. So I'm going to start digging a hole. Digging away. Kind of similarly to what we did on the other side. It's much easier for me to work standing up, so half my head will just have to live with being cut off. That's okay. And Dave is asking, are you going to save any horns for the wizard hat? And I'm saying, you know what? Most likely, because I made up far too many horns. Like, far too many. Now, a dragon can never have too many horns, you know? Oh, that's going to be kind of difficult. Maybe if I angle it this way. That's going to be tricky, but I'm going to leave it. Because it'll look funny either, you know, any other way. So I really like the angle of that. Now I'm going to do another worm. So let's... This worm might be a little too long, but that's okay. I'm just going to wrap around here, and we're just going to hug the horn with our worm. It's almost like the glue that'll hold it in place. And now all I'm going to do is try and blend this bottom edge here into the dragon. So using my bigger ball. So it's kind of seamless. And I think this is too much. I'm going to take my little, oop, that's a big knife. And it can get into these tiny little corners. There we go. And I'm just going to blend over the top of his head. Let's turn this guy like that. And we can see some white here from the previous horn, which doesn't really matter because we're going to be painting. And oh, let me put my eyeballs on. Make sure I'm doing this right? Here we go ahead. Kind of botched it. All right. Now I'm going to blendy blend. This thing kind of makes your problems all go away when you think something looks pretty bad. It's good at disguising it. All right. So like the other one, so it's not so smooth, let's add some Oh, Frozen Mustache is saying, I got lost on Twitch, but I'm back. Okay, you blew up here in Texas for a minute. Yeah, all right. I saw something saying that I was offline on the one platform, so I was hoping it was just the one platform. So it's probably me then, if you guys are all, you know, fine. But it's just my stream that's messed up. We must have had some kind of weird internet connection drop. But as long as I'm back, I'm back. And so, Frozen Mustache, we are making our dragon horns now, for reals this time. The last time was just a rehearsal. It was like a whoops. So now I'm going to add some ridges to the skin by dragging this real sharp point across like that. And then another one. And I'm not trying to make them even. Skin is not even. Make it look like a folded skin, you know, like that folded skin leading up to that horn, just to make it look like, you know, I'm not using this as a band-aid to hold this horn or nothing, you know, just disguise that a little bit. So I think the horns look pretty good. Look at that. I like the angle of it going back like that. It looks pretty darn menacing. And I didn't take my little wrinkles all the way, so I'm going to go ahead and do that on here. And do it here. It's like the wrinkles stopped. That's the thing with these 3D elements. It's like, uh-oh, a little bit of clay there. You have to remember to do it on all sides or else it looks kind of funky. All right, so I need to get a tool down here where you guys can't see just to smooth this out. Kind of started coming loose. All right, so I think those two horns are pretty well positioned. And let's see, maybe I can kind of do this. And I say, you know, we can put other horns kind of coming through or maybe down his neck. Let's see what kind of sizes I got going on here in our collection of horns. So maybe something kind of like this. That looks kind of neat. You know, I say the more horns on his head, the better. And I'm going to see if I can find something kind of this size. I made so many different sizes, and of course none of them are arranged by size. They're all random, so I'm just going to have to dig around a little bit here to see what I have. This one looks pretty good. Yep, these look about the same size. All right, hopefully I will not continue to blow up or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and maybe add one here. Probably don't want to add any here. Well, I don't know, that looks kind of cool too. And I think if we add a couple like tiny ones going all the way up to his nose, and I thought if we add a couple kind of like a beard a little bit on his chin, might look kind of neat. And adding a horn here will kind of help disguise what we've done with his, you know, melding of these horns. So I'm thinking I'm liking that idea. So I just created 2 divots up top, and I'm going to stick, not quite sure how to do this one without these wings or anything. There we go. Get the angle just right. That one's much smaller. It looked like it was bigger, but it's smaller. Let's pop him out and pop him in. There we go. Much better. Pop him in. So we'll do a couple on his head. Then we can move on to other horns, just so we don't spend the whole night on his head. You guys will get the idea. And so what I'm gonna do now is, let's see if the big ball here will help us. And I'm pretty much gonna do, let me see if I can bring you guys in a little closer. Yes, a little closer. So all I'm gonna do here is just smush the surrounding skin right up to the horn. Theoretically, there should be hopefully enough to hold it in place. And maybe I can do the tiniest worm known to man. This is going to be difficult. Little tiny worm. And I know you guys see nothing but a knuckle sandwich from Rachel. So give me a second here to clear my hand. Just getting the size of this thing right. And you guys will kind of see what I'm getting at here. No good way to shoot this one. So I'm just putting this little worm here across to add more clay so we can, you know, anchor them a little bit better. Now, I don't think every horn is going to require this, but I think some of our more statement horns, I guess I'll call them. These are our statement pieces horns. And I'll shove some in between the horn. And in the back of the horn, and then kind of smooth it out with this ball tool. Nice. Now I feel the grip a lot better now, because although they're a little loose, they're in there. And once this clay bakes around them, and you can rebake baked clay with new clay, baked clay with baked clay, you know, especially if you have a thick piece, you always want to work in 1/4 inch increments, you know, so build up your piece to a 1/4 inch, bake it, then add the next 1/4 inch, bake it. And so that's one of the reasons we use an armature and our foil to build up our dragon, so we don't have to go through multiple bakes, which like eats up a ton of time. So let's see if we can get this thing to focus a little bit. I'm going to jiggle him around, see if the camera's like, ooh, something's moving in front of me, and you know, maybe move him back a little bit. There we go. So now we have some cool horns like that. I think that's pretty cool. All right, so let's see if we can find one for the tip of his nose, and I think that should be not a huge one, but I think it should work its way from bigger to smaller, to all the way up to the bridge of his nose, and then back up bigger, right up the middle. So let's see if we can find one that makes sense for the tip of his nose. Maybe something like this, and I am grabbing my tweezers for this one. Let's see, I lost him. Here he is. This little guy right here is the victim. Ooh. He almost fell. All right, so for this, I don't think I'm even going to make a hole. I think, and I'm going to watch that tooth because that tooth is soft. So I'm going to hold the tip of his tongue or the tip of his nose and try and just smash it in there. This clay is kind of hard. It's got kind of a curvature. So I'm going to do it this way. And smash it in there. Let's see here. I'm thinking a bigger one. And I think I will I'm going to put him up here so I don't lose him. And I think I will kind of carve something. That way I don't have to use so much force. I didn't think I was going to have to use all that much force, but oh no, alas. So I thought that other one was a little too small. It was too conservative. So let's go a little bit bigger, and I'll try and get out of your guys' way here so you can actually see something. Wouldn't that be nice? There, that's much better. And I'm just going to use probably just the smoothing tool to kind of smooth some clay around his nose. And maybe add the tiniest amount. Dave, yeah, epidermis close-up time. For sure. For sure. It's probably too big. Oops. All right, so this one's way tougher than I thought it was going to be. His nose. I thought the big horns were going to be it. Let's see if I can move this wire out of the way so it's not going to screw up our horns. All right. Oh, I have an idea, guys. I just thought of it. Since we are going to be placing horns on this thing from the nose, why don't we just make a worm and stick horns in them? There. Much easier. Much, much easier. That way we don't have to try and build up to like these tiny, tiny little horns where it's just not going to work. Little horns. And it's just like picking the right ones. And I did kind of smoosh the teeth, but I'll fix that. That's actually fixable. Much easier than trying to get these horns on, but much easier to get these horns on than this way than the way we were trying to do them when the horns were still soft. That was getting to be a bit impossible. And one more horn. Then once we do this row, maybe we can call it quits for a moment on the head. See what we can do with the neck. A bit. Because I think there's some cool things. And now I'm just looking for little horn pieces. Here's one. I was afraid to like remove them from the cookie sheet because I'm like, oh, what if they fall or something? And then I got horns all over the floor. All the horns I've worked on. And probably one like this. So far none of the horns have broken. So that's telling me that most likely I cooked this thing up to the correct, time. And as long as you have a house oven that can maintain a temperature pretty reliably, you're pretty good. All right, one more horn. A face can never have too many horns, right? Especially a dragon face. Now, I think more horns kind of behind his eyes would look also very, very cool. But we can come back to that because I'm kind of curious as to what we're going to do on the neck. And all I'm doing is blending that worm that we added. And then I can go in once we add all the horns in and just kind of fix some of the facial expression elements of the dragon that I might have grabbed onto and butchered. But he's looking pretty good. I don't think we butchered him too bad. Maybe his tooth, but we can fix that. We can fix that. Little loosey-goosey. So let me flip him now to his necular area. The neck area, and we're gonna have a bit of a challenge here with this part of the neck, but I figure if we could do one fin, get it the way we like, I can then take that and transfer it to the other fins and then figure out what we want to do with his back, his podonkadonk, and then down through his tail. So we're doing kind of an example of each type of section, of his body. Now, I thought it'd be kind of cool to put horns along his fins, so I kind of put them there for support. And I thought that would help support the, the spikes. So let me do kind of what we've been doing, and I'm going to add a big old hole, basically right there. And, oh, it's got to be right where this wire is. The planning, people, didn't quite work. And I'm basically pinching the skin to, this flap, so that way it kind of melds with the flap. And then I'm going to create, our typical little worm. I'm going to try and make this one really little, though, this time. Little worm. And put it around the horn. Like that. And now we're going to go ahead and maybe I'll even use this tool. Now I'm trying to not touch the dragon where we've done detail, but I got to tell you, it ain't easy. It ain't easy. Yeah, maybe I'll do this. Little ball tool again. Going back to the old reliable ball tool. All right. And then let's blend the ball tool with this kind of rubber pointy thing. That's my name for the tools. Like a real clay sculptor is like, oh dear God, what is she calling these things? All right, and to add some realism, I'm just gonna put a couple grooves. Like skin flaps leading up to the spike. That's cool. And we can do another one kind of similar size. Let's see, is this kind of a similar size? Yep, just about. And we can figure out how much we want to, space them. If we want to do a whole bunch close together. I hate to say that's a ton of work, but probably super cool going down. Rather than just, very spaced apart, might look kind of funky. So what I might do is stab these guys in and then do one giant worm. And I'm using the skin flap back here to press up against him and hold him into place. So hopefully I don't end up like using so many spikes that I gotta, cook up some more. But, those are all good problems to have. And as for the wizard, I think Dave was asking, is the wizard going to have any spikes? Well, I think he's got to, I think if he's adorning spikes, it just tells the other dragons, like, hey, I've killed some dragons. I'm a dragon slayer, people. Don't mess with me. And all I'm doing is realizing that, maybe I want these to lean back a little bit. Lean back. Lean back. Just to give them a little bit of movement. There we go. And I'm just trying to eyeball, similarly sized, similarly sized spikes. Just gonna do this now so you guys can kind of see what's going on. And I'm going to try and lean him in a similar fashion. Lean him back. Lean this guy further back. And then one more. I think you guys get the gist of what this is. But sometimes these really, that's way too long. These really tedious ones, these are the ones that end up looking the best. So I think if I do a couple example positions, we can be happy with them. And I think I'm going to try and start getting the spikes to go smaller as we work our way back. So this one's kind of a smaller looking spike. Let's try him. And I'm like looking through this little thing. That's basically, oops, my view of what I'm doing. And Dave has a good idea to lean them back because they probably lean back during flight. Yes, for aerodynamic purposes. Very true. Oh no, I'm smushing this flap. Let me unsmush him. This center flap. Of course, I had the idea of doing 3 flaps. I mean, why not? That means more horns, more work, more work. Ooh, typical Rachel. And here I am, like, knocking you guys over. There. And where was I? So his stomach area and his chest area, unfortunately, are probably going to get no details. Because every time I try and reach up in there, I end up like hitting wings, hitting, all the other elements. And since it's not really going to be seen, I am not really going to worry about going nuts on that. And then risk kind of ruining all this cool wrinkle work. And you can see I'm not done. Look at how smooth this is. I still have to add all this wrinkle-tastic stuff to this part of the wing. But sometimes it's helpful to switch it up. Because you start to kind of like, get bored of doing one thing and then you start to rush it and then it just doesn't look as good. So sometimes I like to just, change it up. And I'm just kind of switching this over here so I can see it a little bit better. And I'm kind of liking a whole bunch of spikes. And what I'm going to do here leading up to this big horn is likewise shrink the size of the spikes. They start to get small. So it's like small, big, small. Kind of like is it the Spinosaurus? Or which is that dinosaur that has the spikes along the back? I think it's only one row of spikes. And it does the same thing. It's biggest or tallest in the center of the guy's, of the dinosaur's back. And then it starts to get smaller and smaller. And Dave is constantly adding to my dictionary of made-up words, so he is going to add wrinkle-tastic to that, to the dictionary. And let's see, is this getting smaller? No, that's getting bigger. So let's start to like really get small now with these spikes. And I think maybe something like this. I thought about putting some long spikes. I have spikes that are like this long. I mean, look at that. And I thought that would be very cool for the tail. So we're almost done the neck area here, so we can think about what we want to do for his back and then work our way up to his tail, because I think we could do some cool things. Making a little hole there, and I'm going to like reach around you guys here for a second, and got a bit of a, some knuckle sandwiches going on, but I'm doing my best. Now these spikes are pretty loose, so that's why I'm going to add one giant worm and then press them in between the spikes, so it just looks like a fold of skin that's holding the spikes together. And let's see, I'm going to duck down. Are these spikes getting smaller? They are. Great. There we go. So having these flaps is actually a good thing. I was debating, but I'm kind of glad that I did it, because it gives it some, something that the spikes can stick to. And they're getting a little bit smaller. This one's much smaller. Oops. There goes my tweezers. And I'm wondering if it would help you guys if I kind of use tweezers instead, so you don't get such an epidermis type of situation. There we go. A lot of skin, a lot of punching. All right. And I think we only have a couple more on this neck piece. The reason I'm holding off on the head is because probably I'm going to have to turn this thing in a position that's going to be kind of impossible for you guys to see what's going on. So I figured we'd do a couple example spikes on his head, especially those big old longhorns, curved longhorns. Make sure we get those into place. And then a couple on his head, and then I think I'm just going to fill his head with like little spikes. And literally it's going to be wash, rinse, and repeat of what I'm doing now, making holes with our largest ball stylus tool, and then sticking them in, and then making a little worm shape to wrap around the horn, blending the bottom of that worm to the existing skin, and leaving the top alone, and then adding some ridges to make it look like it's, supposed to be there, and it's not just glue. So I'm gonna go ahead and lean him back. He's looking more dinosaur-like. I was concerned that he was looking a little much like a salamander, and that's where I think creating a beard of horns is going to be kind of cool, kind of like a goatee on this end, and then the horns get smaller and smaller, and then we can create some large kind of this size spikes coming out of here, leading up to the big long horns, and then continuing it down his little flaps. I think that's going to look really, really cool. But I think what I'm going to do is attack that in one shot and then re-sculpt his face, because I can already see by the eye, I kind of like smudged his eye. And so that way I get all the horns done. I don't have to touch it anymore. And then I can re-sculpt his face and stick this thing in the oven. Obviously finish up some of the other parts. And we want to add texturizing to his skin as well. So let me move on down. So basically what I would do here is we have 3 skin flaps. I would repeat exactly what I did here on each skin flap. This one being the most difficult to get to, but I think we can fix it. And one of the things we can do with the skin flap, I just realized, instead of adding let's try this. Instead of adding a worm going down here, I'm wondering if I can just take the skin flap and just mush the clay over like that. And that pretty much just folds that over and keeps them in place. Look at that, that just blends. Guys, I think I just made my life a ton easier. Yeah, these are much better held in place now. And that's less clay I have to keep adding to this thing. So yeah, I just fold over the skin flap. And now it's become more of a ridge than a flap, which is fine because we can add some cool texture to it. Yeah, I think I am digging that, guys. And we can still add our skin worm if we would like to. And I'm gonna sit down for this because I kind of gotta get under him and get these blended. And then we're working, after I kind of fold these over, let's figure something out for the back. Like, do we want naked back, or do we want a couple spikes going on his back as well, and his padonkadonk? Although that would be very uncomfortable to sit. And flapolas. This might have been the move, guys. Sometimes when things are the move, great little discoveries. Got a bit of little kitty hair there. Somebody like kept insisting on wanting to lay on top of my horn cookie sheet. They're like, oh, you just worked so hard on these horns. How would you feel if I just laid on them? And you're like, no, bad cat. All right, and then I'll be able to use my smoothing tool, but I'm not gonna worry about it too much at this point because I'm probably gonna wanna add a little bit more clay around these horns. And I'm just like looking at my stream, making sure it doesn't go down again. I probably had some kind of momentary internet lapse, but I'm getting to be excited about this dragon. I think it came out way better than I thought it was gonna come. It did come out. It was kind of an experiment, and I did have backup plans. I am not gonna lie that I did have some backup plans in case this thing was a complete disaster. Because heck, I've never done like a clay model like this. Who knows how it was gonna turn out? Who knows? But you'll never know if you don't give it a try. So I figured, you know, worst case scenario, I'll just say I don't got clay skills. So yeah, I got some beginner clay skills right there. Some beginners. All right, so I'm thinking that I'm loving the big going to small, and I'm gonna do the same thing and make this is gonna be the longest one, and then from here on out they're gonna get smaller and smaller and smaller. So while I have you guys here, I might as well just kind of do that, and let's just get this neck done with. Right? So let's see. I'm gonna do the same thing. Pokey poke. And we're not gonna be able to go all the way up because of this giant longhorn situation. It's pretty cool. I'm already thinking painting schemes for this thing. What we're gonna do. And it's probably gonna be cool. I'm using the tweezers to just pinch that skin right around it, and you can see that horn is now beginning to get smaller. And so I'm gonna try and find one that's even smaller than that one and start the, ooh, that one's got a big fat like end there, so I'll just go for another one. Make my life easy. Maybe this one. Yeah. And this is probably going to be the last one. So why don't I make this a little bit smaller? Yeah, because we're getting intrusive here on this longhorn. This curved kind of maleficent looking horn. It's our Maleficent dragon. That was a fun movie. I might as well just use this to scrunch. Dave has a good idea. We're going to put a year's worth of Rachelisms on Discord. Oh my gosh. I'm sure we're acquiring some good ones. I'm thinking we probably already have filled the books pretty well. And this is kind of impossible now. I'm going to keep the horns in place while folding this. Folding the skin. When you cannot use your hands. Kind of tough. These might need a worm. A worm of support. A supportive worm. Don't fall out, please. Work with me here. Dragon is like, you're hilarious. I'm a dragon. I don't make anybody's life easy. I will scorch your attempts at molding me. All right, so I think I successfully got these guys in. All right, so I think that's as close as we're going to be able to get to this horn situation right there. So turning him now and looking at his back here, and I'm only going to have to repeat this 2 more times up there, but, you know, I'll figure that out. So let's do an example here, and I'm just leaning him because his little wires are getting all tangled up. Let me get them out of the way. There we go. Now, similarly, we have fins on his podonkadonk, and they go all the way to the end of the tail. So we're probably going to use the same spiking technique all the way down, but maybe do some like real large ones, and then they start to get, you know, smaller and smaller, and then some really big ones for the tail. So I'm going to try and reserve my largest ones for that tail there, because I think that'll look pretty cool. Now, do we want anything going down his back, or is his back going to be bare? Now, you'll notice that his skin right now is relatively smooth. We are going to be adding texture, much like these wings here, except it'll be more dotted. It'll be more like crepey skin looking, like my hands are looking right now. The clay seems to like suck up all the moisture from your hands, no matter how much lotion you put. So we can do Rachel Crepey hands on his skin after we put the horns in. I was going to do all this before and have it all ready for you guys, but then I was like, it's just going to be a waste, because I'm going to struggle to put these horns in, and it's going to totally ruin, all the work that I did, all the Rachel Crepey hand work. So let's finish up the horns, and then we can texturize. Let's see here. Let me go back to your guys' camera here. We're pretty much stuck in this view, and I have my little repository that, you know, I'm kind of putting right there, which you guys can't see, but it's just below him. All right, so I'm thinking, I'm kind of liking the big horns on his butt, which I feel bad for him, because how does he even sleep? And I'm wondering if we should do some big horns going down his back, and maybe they get little here and then go right back up to getting big here. And so by the time they're here, they're pretty big, like that. I think I am going to do some big horns on his butt. Poor thing. It's like, how does he sleep at night? So yeah, because once I fold the skin over, it's going to be kind of tough to get these guys out. But I think, yes, and I'm going to lean it back a little bit more than I did there. I wanted to lean these guys back. So I'm just going to stick him there. Oh, I forgot to poke some holes. Let me remove him and poke a better hole in his little butt. Some of these horn bases are rather fat, you know, so it requires a big old hole. But so far, none of them have broken, and I'm applying a decent amount of pressure to these horns. So that's pretty good. And I'm saving some of these large ones here. There, I like that one. And maybe you guys need to look down a little bit more. There we go. This one was probably the toughest to film because there's just no good camera angles. I'm like, I gotta put this thing on my lap pretty much for you guys to see. And I'm just pinching it against this flap for now. And picking different size little horns where we can start transitioning into kind of a smaller situation. There we go. This is a larger one. So let's do maybe you. And because I hand rolled each one of these guys, one of the reasons that my first attempt was to try and do these wet was I wanted to get the horns as even and as uniform looking as possible. But it was just, can you imagine trying to do all this with like floppy horns? It just wasn't going to work. So the advantage I found, I mean, at first when I was rolling these by hand, I tried way too hard to get these to look exactly the same, one, you know, between horns. And what I found is now that I'm putting them in, it looks way cooler to have them kind of a little bit different from each other. So they don't look like toothpicks, you know, they look like a horn would normally be, and then we'll paint some striations into the paint or into the horn to make it look more weathered. But you can see if like a company makes a ton of different colors of clay, you can in essence build your dragon without ever having to paint it. You can give it kind of a more brown stomach, you know, brown or grayish texture. You can mix clay colors, you know, to come up with your own custom color. And so Dave is liking the large horns for weapons, such as the tip of the tail. Yeah, it's almost like I'm thinking of like it can use it as a, where are you guys? It can use it as a club. This is great. Yeah, it can almost use its tail as a club, which I'm sure that's how the wizard got a couple horns, because he was able to like grab some from the tail or rip it off. Because he's not just any regular wizard. He is a dragon hunter wizard, because he's tired of these dragons coming around trying to take his orb. So he figured, I'll get you first. I'll get you dragons first. So you can see that I'm beginning to get smaller with my little spikes, and that guy's a little fat, so we're just going to back off him and maybe use him. And a bit tough of a position. So anyways, you guys kind of get the, you know, the gist here. So trying to figure out this back. It might look kind of neat just as is, you know, once we put the texture, or instead of large spikes, because we have large spikes here, we kind of have large spikes on its neck over here. Maybe just a row of little babies, you know, just a whole bunch of like little baby spikes. And I have a whole bunch of those that we can just put in here, you know, just kind of like a lightly spiny back. and then they start to get bigger here all the way up until we get to our club tail, which is something I think we can probably figure out. So we have these two flaps of skin, and I thought about making, oh, where's my little extra here? Here's my extra. I'm gonna need a ton extra because I'm thinking of making an actual club on this thing and see how that's gonna look. So let me cut off more clay and get that all mended in. All right, so Dave has a good evolution point. Evolution-wise, he's saying big horns protect important dragon innards such as kidneys and stuff. Oh yeah, so maybe it does make sense on his back leading up to the butt to at least put some smaller spikes going on. Something. Just to, you know, protect that area. And they have very stiff scales typically on their chest in their abdomen. On their abdomen, I should say, not inside their abdomen. So I'm trying to get this like kneading it because it gets real soft the more you knead it. Now this brand of clay, this Craft Smart, is a stiffer clay. It's like an economy clay, but it is stiffer, and I ended up liking that because in my beginnerisms, I'm like smacking into things all the time as I build him. And I think a softer clay, I would have kind of obliterated this poor thing. So I have a flap, and the idea is to kind of, this is the sides of the tail, and this is the top of the tail, and back here is the bottom of the tail because of the way the tail is curved. So I was almost thinking of doing some kind of, let me see if I fold it this way. Start some kind of situation here and make a club out of his thing, but kind of a flappy club, not like a ball, you know, bulbous type of club. So I have an idea. I'm gonna like make what I did here, but make it go longer. And so this is how I did it. So I'm just gonna back you guys up a little bit so you see the floor here, or the tabletop. And I'm just gonna make a worm, kind of a fattish type worm like that. And then I'm gonna take this cookie dough roller, which it's not, it's for clay, and make it into a rectangle. Kind of like that, just kind of by smushing it. And I'm going to miter this end like that. And add him like this. Now, I'm putting him sideways for a reason, because we're going to take our ball tool. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. I'm going to do that again. It's like, I don't like this design. This is horrible. So it fell off. It took its own life. It's like, I don't want to be a part of this dragon thing. And all I'm doing is blending the bottom portion of this onto the tail so it sticks good. And then you can flip up our fin. So now we got a fin. And I'm going to bring you guys in closer to this atrocity here. And hopefully you're not getting too drunk. And what I'm going to do is start to fold this into some kind of like bigger flap. And it's got a little bit of white, you know, our white clay. All right. So the idea, and we're gonna put like a spike this way and spikes coming out that way, kind of a club, and bigger spikes here. So it's gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 type of spikes. And I'm gonna do what we just did on the other side. So if you come real close and look all the way down, you can kind of see what I'm attempting to go for. And I'm just gonna scooch you guys like this, put a support foot, because you guys wanna like fall into my project right now. So I'm gonna do the same thing, kind of, oh no, you guys can see this. So I'm just rolling up another worm or pretzel. You know, if you're in the Philly area, a nice little pretzel. And we're going to turn it into a rectangle again. Somewhat of a rectangle. And I'm going to miter one end. We'll miter this end. Just so you create kind of this, see how it goes from kind of small and then fans out to big. So it kind of helps us do that. And, ooh, this one's going to be tough. I'm going to have to kind of like go under, you guys. Hold on, I'm going in. I'm going in. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to lean it. Where does the other one start? About there, right? So I'm going to lean it and try and get my big old hands out of the way. Wouldn't that be nice? And I'm blending the bottom portion of our fin just so it sticks to the tail. And then we're going to go ahead and flip it over. And we got some skin. We do a little bit more blending. That's not really blending, it's more like hanging on for dear life. There. I'm going to fold this over and maybe blend a little more up in here, just so you don't see that crease. And also it just kind of helps the clay stick to each other. And I'm not too worried about the texture right now. Oh no, don't rip off. More Rachel Crippy skin. There. So, and see, like I'm just pushing the clay because see how it hides the seam, and now you get almost pretty perfectly smooth clay. And I have a whole bunch of bulbous clay here that I'm moving to the tip. Now, let's see if we can somehow shape this thing. And I'm kind of blending the skin on this side. And using the overhead camera is actually difficult because it's always going to focus on the tallest, the thing close to it, which is the wings. So this whole bottom portion would appear rather blurry. We had that problem the last time. See how it's almost becoming a club shape? And now what I want to do is maybe start making it more of a club shape. And I think once we add our spines to this, it should give it more stability. So this is my first dragon tail, people. So I'm just kind of going for it and trying to figure it out as I go. And maybe we can even that out a little bit. I need to find like a good little camera. Not like the big ones, but good that stays in. I should probably just turn the autofocus off this thing. I think that will work wonders. All right. So that's kind of the triangle I was kind of going for. So I'm going to use some of this excess here because it's thin here, but fat here. So you can see it's like that. So, were you thinking Stegosaurus dino as the horn model age? I think so. I think that's the name of the dinosaur. I was trying to remember what it was called. I was like Spinosaurus, Triceratops. Nope, that's clearly not the one with the spines. It's got the really nice headpiece though. But yes, I was trying to think of like something like that because you would think, at least when I think of dinosaurs, dragons, when I think of dragons, they're kind of prehistoric. I mean, not kind of. They're very prehistoric creatures. And so I've seen fantasy dragons that are more like fish looking. Some are furry. And especially when we were having that discussion about Eastern dragons versus Western dragons, how the Western ones are more snake-like. I've always liked very prehistoric looking dragons. And you can see just by doing a simple things to the skin, it's already giving it, you know, a little bit of texture. But I'm not going to go too nuts with the texture. And here what I've done is just when I pinch, I've thickened the skin, whereas this is still like flappy wappy. And you can see how flappy this is. It's about the same, whereas this is thicker. So I just want to build up the thickness a little bit in this skin, and then we'll kind of reshape it because I just kind of botched up the shape. So I guess what I'm trying to create now that I'm looking at it, I couldn't come up with a name for it earlier, is, oops, like an arrowhead type of shape that we can then put some spikes on. So all I'm doing is doubling up just to make this thicker, you know, because see, we got to reattach that thing. I'll make this thing a little bit thicker, always helps. And then if you just rub it, like push and drag just a little bit, it blends in rather nicely. So let's take our ball tool and attempt this one more time. And I'm going to lean it on its side so we can get the bottom of it really nice squished in like that. And I'm like breathing all over you guys like, hey, you know, right up in your face right now with this. And so that's pretty good. Again, I'm not too worried about skin texture. We're going to be adding horns and all such things. Let me just make sure I didn't squish our other fin here, and no, we did not, because we're awesome. Now you can see that this portion goes further back on the tail where the belly portion is shorter, and I think I'm okay with that. So I may leave this not exactly an arrowhead because I like some of what I did with the wings, which were kind of ripped. You would think that if he's using this tail as a club, portions of skin are probably going to get caught up on stuff and ripped up. So here I'm just kind of rubbing this texture away, which works a lot similar to this tool right here, except this has a point right there. So you can get to much better areas. And let's see, you guys, I think I've budged. Let me debudge you. There we go. So I'm not all up. You're not like hiding up here behind me. There we go. So let's figure out what we're going to do with this. I'm going to try and find my longest spike to put across here. So let me see what I got going on. That one's pretty big. That one's thick. I like that one. I know I specifically made some for the tail. I don't know that I made many, but I did make a decent amount. So I'm not going to worry about putting spikes on the bottom because we're not really going to see them. I think I got this one going. And I forgot I want to make a little indent here. Hopefully I won't have to roll up too many more of these, but just in case, you never know. And what I may do, see how this spike gets buried in the skin? I'm probably going to cut the skin so that way it does not. Something like this. So that's why I didn't go too nuts with what kind of tail shape we're going to have. I got kind of it blobbed out. I guess we'll call it blobbing it out. And then once I got it close, I'm like, let's let the spikes decide how this tail's going to look. And then I can just smooth it out. There we go. And then likewise, we'll fold some of this skin to make it look like all these belong. And we're going to end up doing the same thing here, cutting this out so that way the spikes do come through. And I'll probably end up folding some of this skin over so that way the spikes are far more pronounced. I may end up like bagging kind of this, you know, too much skin. And let me already kind of mimic this. We'll see how it looks. That's the nice thing with clay. It's not permanent. We can change. We're allowed to change our mind. There we go. And here's another large one. add here. And I'm just gonna keep doing that. Let's see. I'm gonna separate a couple big ones and put them where I can grab them. Like that's a pretty nice one right there. And here's a big one. And here's a big one. And here. All right. I wish I made a couple more big ones. I thought we were gonna do a club, you know, like some kind of spiky tail, but I didn't anticipate how spiky I'd want it. Ooh, that's pretty good. That one I think I may want here. Poking out at you guys. Take that. Actually, this is the side fin, so I don't want to put any huge ones in the side fin. Maybe I'll put this one here. Oh yeah, right there. So when it sweeps its tail, you're gonna get it. Oh, turn. I noticed some of them have kind of these little curves that I made because I thought they would look cool. Oh, making sure I'm not, oh, this little fin just doesn't want to stay on. But once I press him to the horn, he'll be fine. He'll stop protesting. All right, a couple more. Trying to find the tallest one, which is probably this one because I want to repeat this look here on the bottom. And he's about here. Oh, he fell over here. And there we go. So we can see that this club tail now is staying on a little bit better because we're adding kind of support, you know, with these spikes. And then we'll add some spikes, you know, on this fin as well. But I'm gonna wrap up this tail first. And so the longest one are gonna go on this plane, and then we'll put some long but not as long ones on that plane. And I'm wondering if we should add one more like that. That might be cool. I may have to make more. But that's okay, because now that I've made these, I'm like, I know I can rock through them. And I'll be covering all these like little horn bits, so that way like the bases aren't exposed, looking very obviously like an aftermarket, you know, part. And that's going to add a lot more strength too. As soon, you know, I'll probably add like a worm over top of them and then press down in between the horns, and that'll look like nice skin wrapping around the horns. And so let's see here. I have that and that. So those will look pretty nice. This tail's looking awesome, people. Oops. I got spikes jumping ship. Like, get me out of this project. You know, Rachel is gonna screw it up. Maybe the laughing stock dragon, and that wizard will get us for sure. I don't know. Who do you guys root for in a dragon versus wizard fight? Dragon or wizard? Guess it depends on how fast the dragon is, because the size alone is just insane. All right. Ooh, I got some big ones. I do have some big ones. Oh gosh, in the beginning, guys, I have to show you this. Oh, this was a travesty. So I tried. I don't know if you can see, but it's got texturizing. I tried to literally texturize every horn, but look at what happens to the tip. it gets blunt, you know, just from me handling it. So these were the two that I tried and I gave up. I was like, I'm over this, you know? I need to roll these out like mass production style. And to be honest, I like these better. I like these bony type of ones better than I was trying to do more deer horn looking ones. But the bony ones that look clearly like spikes are so much better. I'm way happier with these. So, and they take almost, you know, they take very little time to put together. So I want to start to try and get smaller now. Work our way smaller like we did. Oh, I'm gonna have to go around you guys. Give you guys a big old hug. So far, we've had nothing but happy little surprises. I'm gonna say. Happy little surprises. So, I've been trying to prove Bob Ross wrong this entire time with all these projects, and I've yet to do it. So, Bob Ross 1, or Bob Ross many points, Rachel 0. Ooh, that's a fat base. I'm gonna dig them in there. Dig them in. Dig them in. And let me lean him down. It's like all standing up, all getting a little too excited there. There we go. So once we covered the bases with a thin layer of skin, I think this is going to look pretty cool. And I think I am going to trim away some of this excess skin here to let the spikes be even more visible. Because these skin flaps are kind of hiding them. But I'll do that kind of in one shot once I kind of decide how I like the tail. Although the irregularity of the skin is kind of neat. That is kind of neat. This is very easy to change, you know, if we want to change it. So I think I'll leave it rather than, oops, I changed my mind and I want to add back. Now I got the spikes to contend with. So I think I'm going to hold off on that just a little bit. And again, I'm not going to be too concerned about this underside, because if this lamp is sitting on the table, like, people aren't going to be like, oh, you know, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to worry more about decorating. Let me get you guys back up again. I'm going to worry more about decorating these two spines that come up, you know, because this is very visible. Although the dragon is in the back of the castle, you know, people walk all the way around your table, they'll be able to see it. So here is the back spinal cord of the dragon, and then this flap gets made. So this is like the dorsal side and the ventral side, you know, belly side and back side. So these are the right and left sides. So I definitely want to put some spikes here, but perhaps not as big as, turn them around for you guys to see well, which means I don't get to see very well, but you know, maybe something like that. And let me see what other big old spines I have, because whatever I do here, I'll add some big spinage there as well. So let's see, I'm picking up my longest ones that I have left, and guys, I might be able to make it. I might. Ooh, that's a real long one. That's a great one. All right, and this is a nice long one. Who wins the prize of long spinage? And I got a ton of tiny ones. So I'm like, you know what? I made them. I might as well use them. I might cover his back in tiny, tiny little spines. So I have a couple here, and I'm thinking this is my longest one over here. So let's put this towards the tip, like that. And let me make a hole for him. He's gonna live right there. All right, and trying to eyeball which one's the next shortest one, and I'm just gonna kind of smoosh this skin down a little bit, and I can even fold it a little bit over these spikes a little bit. Just a little bit. This one's got a cool bend to it. Look at that. And yeah, I'm thinking this spiky tail idea is looking pretty good. Looking menacing. If it were to be in focus, it'd be even better, right? Way better. Do I have to move you guys back or move you guys forward? There we go. I think my hands kind of get in the way. So for next stream, we can try with the autofocus off. And I'll just have to keep you guys at a similar distance. So that's looking pretty good. And we can easily kind of build up the flap again if we need to. But let's see, the next longest is this guy. I think it was this guy. Yep. This one's rather skinny, but that's kind of cool. I am just going for my head. Just kind of adding spikes. And one thing I'm realizing is that you can't really mess up with spikes. Like, spikes just look cool. So even if, you know, you come out with the most rinky-dink looking dragon, the spikes will redeem it. Trust me. I think it's redeeming. Anything that, you know, might have not gone the best with this dragon is being completely redeemed right now. So that's giving it some very cool dimension right there. And then I have this kind of big spike. And then we'll start working our way small. And then do the same thing with this flap right here. Do some nice big spikes and then work our way small. Put in a giant hole. This one's got a nice curvature too. So yeah, I really like the way that they all came out shaped ever so slightly differently. Because it's almost like real bone growth protruding from his, I guess his spine, these things would be protruding from. They're not just floating around in his muscle, but we are getting kind of a club situation going on here. And once I put another layer of skin to kind of secure these horns, it's gonna look more clubby with a flap coming out of it. Because I imagine these flaps also have like little tendons and muscles so he can contract and expand. So he can make it into a sharp point to stab you with it like that, or he can fan it out like this to just, you know, slice and dice. We'll call it slice and dice your body. So I've been hiding back here, you know. So I'm still here. All right. So Dave Beck is saying, I like the arrow horned tail thingy. Looks real. Yeah. No, it ended up looking. It's not exactly an arrowhead because it's. I kind of like the irregularity going on with it. And Dave is saying the spikes are cool. I'm just going to move his wing a little bit like that because I see it wanting to go towards that big horn that we put in. So that's like a big no-no. So here I'm going to stop with the big long spikes and we're going to start transitioning to small spikes. But before we do that, here's another flap that we have to contend with. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of repeat what we did here, but for this flap, which means this anatomically needs to be more like this. There we go. It was beginning to fall down. So now I have a couple big ones left, and I'm going to see if I have any more big ones to kind of mimic what we've already done. A couple long ones, so that way on one side they're not like all short and not at all looking like the ones we just did. So here's a couple more. We did 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to pick 4 of the longest guys here. So good, guys. I think we ended up with the right number of horns. I kind of guesstimated right. Now this one's going to be like impossible to see. So I'm going to back you guys on out because I'm actually going to have to like go get down like this and stick them in like this. So let's see. I'm going to try and mimic the same location. So let's see. I need to like grab this tail like this, but I can't. So I'm just gonna kind of glad I didn't do any of the texturizing of the skin because it would all be botched by now. I think this is the longest one. And I'm going to put it with the curve going like whoop, like that. And let's try and kind of mimic the same, ooh, kind of push down on that too hard. Mimic the same trajectory. And I don't really have, the skin flap for this one ends here. It ends short. I don't really have a skin flap for that. So not much to hold these spikes in. So I'm going to create one real quick. I'm going to create a worm that I can just put these in. And then we'll figure blending them. I'll just stop it right there. And I'll pinch to blend it with this skin flap right here. I just realized I don't really have a place to anchor these down. All right, I'll try again. Yeah, and so far they're flexible like they're supposed to be, but they're not breaking. So that's the way polymer clay is supposed to work when you bake it. Now the dragon, I'm going to use a similar, technique. I don't think there's anywhere on the dragon where we're having more than a 1/4 inch thickness of clay. This dragon is pretty thin because I think we did a good job of bulking out where we needed to bulk out, and with foil and not with clay, and then just adding a thin layer of clay for us to sculpt the skin textures on. So I tried to keep that in mind. So theoretically we should only need to bake this thing for about 15 minutes, but I'm going to bake it longer. Now, so long as you keep the temperature correct at 275 and your oven does a pretty good job of keeping it correct, you should be good. Like there's no like burning or I guess over baking. If the temperature gets too high, what'll tend to happen is you'll see a color change in your clay. And that's when you know you've probably kind of singed it a little bit. But that's most important, say for jewelry makers. If you're making a really nice piece of jewelry and you're depending on the color of the clay, you're not going to paint it and you need that color to stay true, that's, you have to really pay attention to your baking times and temperature, most importantly, temperature. But for our purposes, say I it doesn't maintain temperature and it creeps up to, maybe 300 degrees or more. At that point, then yes, this could change colors. You can see that. But our advantage is that we're going to be painting this thing. So it's kind of forgiving. The baking process for us, I think, is going to be forgiving. Now, famous last words. I'm hoping that this is my first time. I have no idea if there are certain areas of the dragon that needed to be built up more. Maybe there's a minimum thickness that you really just need to have your clay at. Otherwise, it just kind of cracks, or the way they're bonded together. Like I try and blend them enough such that they become in unison. One clay, instead of just kind of poking doing this and then trying to bake it that way and then wondering why this cracks off after. I've tried to really do a good job of making everything unison, and I'm using jazz hands to explain this all. But I'm liking this, guys. Look at that. And I'll try and make you guys go lower. Oh, that totally doesn't work. Yep. I ain't giving up my day job to be a cinematographer. I'm not winning any Emmys here for this. But let's see. This view is kind of cool. Let me see if I can inch you guys closer and down. So that's pretty cool. I like all the spikes. We have the stomach spikes on the stomach side, on the back spine side. This is the right side of the dragon. And then we have a mimic of these spikes on the bottom of the dragon. So I think we have a good idea for the tail. And then I'm going to add a bead, like a worm in essence here, just to kind of solidify these horns. But I think we can probably move on. The face of the dragon is a little tough because I already realized that I am going to have to turn him in a way that's going to make it impossible for you guys to see, just so I can align the spikes correctly. But you can see it's a whole bunch of wash, rinse, and repeat going on here. So for his back, and I'm going to kind of go like that with you guys and maybe bring you this way. All right, so for his back, I'm thinking I'm going to repeat this on each of these flaps and maybe just like a whole bunch of little spikes going down. So that way he's not just overwhelmed with spikes. I can't believe I'm saying that the dragon is overwhelmed with spikes, because there's no way for a dragon to be overwhelmed with spikes. But I'm thinking maybe spikes of about this size that we can put just kind of down his back. And out of curiosity, and I just realized that this is sitting on some of our larger spikes. I'm going to salvage them and I'm going to put them back in their tray. So I'm thinking something, and I'm going to have to probably do this so I can see what the heck it is I'm doing and kind of stand and look through this little hole right here as I do this. But we're going to have spikes like this coming down here. So I think the first one would be kind of like there. Like that. The first one always looks so lame. I'm like, ugh, that looks terrible. Let's take it off. And same thing here. And let me see if I can get down so I can perfectly follow his spine so he doesn't look crooked. You know, I think we got a cool dynamic back muscle situation going, and then I don't want to just like jack up the flow with, you know, crooked spikes. And so I am just looking for my tweezers, which are hidden in a bunch of wires. I'm hoping this will allow you guys to see a little bit better. So you can see like there's still some big holes. And for these, I think I'm going to switch from the big ball stylus into something a little bit smaller like that. So I'm going to try and find, likewise, a spike like this. Ooh, I was about to use the wrong one. And maybe a tiny hole like that. We're getting some good spike ideas. But as you can see, this is kind of like the work that you don't really account for when you come up with the idea of, guys, I got this amazing idea. Let's make a whole dragon out of clay. But I'm glad and proud to be able to add clay making, to my skills, people. It's something I've always wanted to try and do. And the next one is like, at some point, I'd like to make a puppet, you know, like a real animatronic little puppet. I think that'd be kind of neat. And learn kind of Jim Henson style puppet making. I think that would make a fun, like, you know, how do you make puppet skin and puppet, you know, hair and all that. I think that would be a lot of fun. We can add like animatronic eyes to him. Heck, maybe we might be able to practice something on our spider. Which reminds me, I have a ton of work to do on that spider this weekend. Holy moly. But I'm gonna get it done. I'm actually pretty excited about this spider. Our giant animatronic spider. Can't wait to see some of the reactions we get. That's gonna be awesome. All right. So the cool thing is, I think we have a good representation of every section of this dragon, so I can kind of copy what we did together onto the other sections. The tail is pretty obvious. We stopped here. It's just a repeat of that, really. And here I'm trying to stay as central as I can. And then I'll take a very tiny tool to kind of help build up some skin around these spikes right here. Only because I might be okay just stabbing them in like that, baking it, and that's fine. But my biggest fear is like if I don't blend in some stuff, some clay, will I pull this out of the oven and these things will just be falling out? I don't know that. So I'd rather not take the chance and simply, you know, take the time to really try and get this. Ooh, that's too long. Way too long. Here we go. Just kind of take the extra time to make sure it comes out right. Because then I'll be super gluing all these things on. Which, listen, I thought about doing. I thought about finishing this dragon without the spikes and then just super gluing the spikes on. And then painting the whole thing. But then, you know, again, I didn't know how well it would look blended in. Like, was it going to look super lame? I don't know. So, again, after all this work we've done, I just didn't want to take the chance. And so the neat thing with these spikes right now is they're all somewhat the same size, but all kind of a little bit different, you know, so it's a little bit scraggly looking. So I kind of like that. Kind of like his scraggles. Oh, I'm going to get behind you guys. I'm using the wrong end. I've been trying to use a smaller hole to stick them in. And using these tweezers. But yes, I read that you need a minimum width. There's not much literature, but a minimum width for these specific questions I had, because I was worried about some of the skin flaps here that are very, very thin. Like, are those gonna crack off or what? So I read that the minimum thickness you should really aim for is 2 millimeters. So I was like, okay, 2 millimeters. So I tried to keep that in mind as I made these. So hopefully that'll work out. And I just need to turn him a little bit so I can continue following his spinal cord line, because I imagine these are growing right out of his spine. And I'm kind of happy to see that this thing is looking way less salamander looking. I was a little bit worried. The sculpt had details. I'm like, okay, this is way better already than I thought this was going to turn out. But it was looking a little salamander-like, you know, and I think it's because his skin is way too smooth. And I'm hoping once we put the texture, it's going to look way, way better. And I'm just kind of going like that. But even with these horns, and say we didn't do anything to the skin, I'm thinking it's already looking really, really good. Way less salamander looking. And I'm going to probably have to rework his head a little bit after I put the spikes in, because I do have to use a bit of force. So he's probably going to get, like, the cool facial expressions I made, probably going to get a little bit crapped on. So I'm going to have to figure that out and rework it. All right, so as I'm going to continue the spine small, and then I'm going to start to transition them a little bit bigger as we work our way to this flap. So let's see here. This one's kind of small. Heck, they might even get a little bit smaller. And at this point, I think I'm going to move to even a smaller stylus, ball stylus. Ooh. And it's okay if they're a little bit crooked, because his back is twisting, you know, so they'd all, oh no, stay there, little leg, little claw. All right, let's keep it small. Let's keep it small, people. Go. Trying to rock through these little spines now that I'm getting the hang of it. when you first start out, it's like trying to just find the right technique. You know, at first I was trying to stick them in with my hand, and now I'm finding that if you just kind of make a groove or like, you know, a hole with the ball stylus and then just kind of stick this in the hole, much better. Much easier. And not make the hole so big. Let's see, I'm gonna switch to a smaller one, even smaller, and kind of readjust the spine. I started going off course just a little bit, so let's readjust. And I'm gonna save any extra horns that I have, because I was thinking we can kind of litter the castle, or, you know, our wizard's tower with it, almost as if the, you know, the dragon has lost some horns in this battle. Some spikes have broken off and they're kind of littering the castle with it. I think that'll look pretty cool. I just don't know what people are going to look at most. Our dinosaur or our dragon wizard battle, or our actual plasma globe. It's going to be like a competition of attention. Like, who gets all the attention? I don't know. We'll see. Now, yes, I want to keep it small still. Keeping it tiny. Let's see. That's pretty tiny. And so they're actually getting smaller now as we're kind of getting to this area, and then it's going to start to dramatically increase. Dramatics. Dramatically. I should make a speed video doing the rest of this. Just like that girl that in the beginning I was watching her video, and it took her 8 months to do a sculpture, like a Renaissance woman, you know, type sculpture, and she packed it down into 8 minutes. I'm like, here's our sculpture packed in at super speed level. And that's the problem, because then people are like, oh, that doesn't look so bad. And then they try and do it themselves, and it's like, oh, this takes so long. I guess, too, when I envision the dragon, this dragon to me as a beginner, I would not consider a large dragon. You know, I consider this like a small dragon. You know, I've seen much bigger sculptures of dragons, so I figured, okay, this one's not going to take all that long. But alas, it's actually kind of a rather large piece. Not the largest. I've seen definitely larger. But I think for a beginner, a very large piece. All right. Now I'm beginning to go a little bit bigger with the spikes, one by one. Just so that way it's not like somebody mowed the lawn here and then all of a sudden it jumps to a bigger spike. So we're just going to start to gradually work the spikes kind of larger. He's kind of fallen asleep there. There we go. These spikes are kind of leaning. There we go. Taking a nap on me. Taking a nap. Let's see, is that too big? Maybe a little bit too big. Getting a little overzealous here with my spikes. All right. Now we might have to move to a bigger ball for bigger spikes. And it's like one of those streams that could also kind of double up as a behind the scenes. Play some tunes, you know? And because this, I imagine, is the kidney area, like right here and here, making the spikes a little bit taller. And then we'll kind of shrink them down because, again, this is the spine. This is the right butt flap and left butt flap. So the spikes will kind of come into his pedonkadonk area and kind of fade off into the distance. But we're going to build them a little bit bigger. Ooh, that might be a little aggressive. Knock it off there, Rachel. Knock it off. And I'm going a little bit deeper with my stylus hole because the bases of these are a bit large. And let me see if I can kind of get my hand back here so I have something to push on. There we go. And this is like a nice size. So yeah. All right, I'm nearing the end, and then I'm going to flip this so you guys can kind of see the size difference. Ended up working really well, I think. This foot, unfortunately, back here is a bit mangled, but there's literally no way to get to it without mangling the wing. So he's just going to have a mangled foot. We can always kind of hide this a little bit in rubble for our wizard's castle. There we go. Looking good, people, getting excited. So, getting some of these big guys on. So much easier than the little ones. The little ones are rough. His face is going to be pretty tough to do. We'll figure it out. I may have to just enlarge this a little bit. All right, then I think I'll do kind of a real, that's too long. A real long one. No, that's too long. Maybe something like this. And then we'll start to bring the size down as we become, you know, coming into contact with this guy. Or coming in its vicinity, I should say. I'm just going to make this hole kind of big because I learned my lesson. And deep. There we go. Some of these bases are a little bit fat. Come to think of it, I probably should have rolled the bases into a point as well, because think of how easier it would have been to kind of stick them in here. Oh, that's something for next time. Although I don't think I'd be building a dragon anytime soon. This is not my last clay project, but I think I'd want like to challenge myself with something else. Not that I've mastered the dragon by any stretch of the imagination, but so you see kind of the neat shape we're getting here, and then it gets little, and then it's beginning to get big, and we don't want it to compete with this, so I'm going to start bringing it back little again. And Carrot Paka is here. What's good, Rachel? Our dragon is good. Check it out. Look at all the progress we made with all the horns that we've done. We did the head. We did one of the fins. We're working on the back now. We did his butt. We did an awesome tail. And so we're just kind of wrapping up this back portion because it's just kind of, everything's kind of a repeat of itself. And so I want to see how this back portion ends up looking before I kind of just start to repeat everything. That's kind of neat. This is starting to get too big now, so this is a good view for you guys, but a little tough for me. So I'm just gonna give you guys a hug like this. Poke a hole and try and get our horn in there. This one has kind of like a neat curve, so let's see if it kind of, if it'll match up pretty well with what we're trying to do. I'm gonna go in left-handed. Some people are, what is it, ambidextrous, where they can use either hand. I'm okay with my left hand. I'm not saying that it's completely useless, but my sister can do anything with like any hand. Super jealous. But I'm sure it's something that if I really, really just tried, I think one could train themselves to be ambidextrous. Maybe you won't be as natural as someone who naturally is, or, maybe you will. But it's something that I should probably train up. I think it'd be interesting to learn and have that skill set. So now I'm making my way smaller with these spikes. And I'm going to stop like right around here. So we have not very many more of these to do. Oop. Started moving around on me. And the challenge is doing this where we could all see what we're doing. I think it's more challenging than doing the actual dragon. And Kareth is saying, this is pretty cool. Yeah, I think so too. This turned out, I'll have to say, guys, I am not going to lie. I had plan B and plan C backups for this situation in case this dragon just took a crap and ended up looking really embarrassing. Or at the end of the day, I wouldn't say that it would have been a waste of time. I see it more as like a learning experience. I learned a new skill. And if it's something that I think we could do better, building a dragon out of foam or, for our lamp, so we're happy with the final product, we would have done that, and no big deal. But we've also would have learned a cool new skill. So I think doing this, even, if I were to take a nice face plant with it, still would have been worth it. But I think we haven't hit faceplant level. I'm thinking this is looking pretty good. And especially when we paint it, it'll hide a lot of some of the things that I didn't see or didn't know to look out for. Those types of things like, oh wow, that's really visible. Whoops. I'm gonna be sure we can. I'm thinking we can hide it with some paint. We've done a lot of painting effects now that we're getting pretty good at that, hiding things with paint. And I'm going to turn this for you guys. And we're getting to kind of that area where I kind of want it to stop. So I'm going to do one or two more, and then we'll take an overall assessment of where we are. And now I want to get one that's kind of small to really be like, hey guys, we're getting to the end on the pedonkadonk, because the pedonkadonk is like, my butt is full of spikes. How do I sleep at night? And I'm like, dragon, that ain't my problem. That is your problem. Sleep on your side or something. This poor thing can either like sleep huddled like this on its stomach or just on its side. That is all. That is your options, dragon. Sorry about that. So let's start making his spikes really small now. Oh, this is gonna be hard. I'm going to about here, so I think I'm going to do two more. This one and another one, and just make the spikes really, really small. Kind of like fading away into the distance. Happy little spike. This thing's going to have a lot of happy little spikes when I get done with it. Cool. I think we need one more small. Let's see what I got in terms of super, super tiny. A little tiny one right here. All right, and for this, I'm going to use my really tiny ball stylus that is so tiny that it's more like a hot poker than anything else. And Kareth is saying, you reached pretty far, pretty fast. I've been working on this thing behind the scenes a lot. We even did our behind the scenes stream, first one yesterday, where I rolled up. That's all I did was just like rolling up these things and getting them to, I'll just talk over here. I was like rolling, this is ridiculous. I was rolling up horns and I got about halfway through the tray before I was like, even for behind the scenes, I'm beginning to feel sorry for these guys. So we changed tracks and we did our spider knees for a little bit, and then after I sent you guys off, I went ahead and finished up the rest of this tray, baked it, and that's how we got to this point. So yes, been doing a lot, and I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 more behind the scenes streams where we're going to dedicate, to this. I think a little bit of adding skin textures might be neat, and figuring that out. I think I'm gonna do the horns all on my own. I think you guys get the drill. It's poke it, stick the horn, poke it, stick the horn. And the biggest thing is to try and create some movement with the size of the horns by trading off between bigger horns and little horns, and trying to create almost like a sound wave, type of thing, and putting the horns longer, like Dave said, where more vital organs are, and then little shorter horns for decor, where other areas are. And so right now he's looking still pretty smooth. Let me see if I can give you guys a much better view here. And that's really the only thing that I really think needs a fix-in, other than the horns, is to unsmooth this skin and make it look very reptilian. We called it the Rachel Creppy skin look. So you can see here his head, if Kareth hasn't seen this. And Dave is agreeing. He's saying that the dragon sleep hedgehog style. So yes, the way we have horned this guy up, he's got no other choice but to sleep hedgehog style. And I'm like using my jazz hands to explain this. So this wire is going to be very interesting. It's going on top of our big horn here. So I keep kind of doing this, to make sure he won't touch. But here's the idea. Once we get this whole thing done, what I'm going to do is see this wire coming out here. That's necessary. If I clip this wire, this whole wing will just fall down. The armature is not strong enough to hold up this much clay. In retrospect, this is what I would have done. I would have soldered portions of this armature together. Rather than trying to wind it, I used some hot glue in order to, it's like all up on me. I used some hot glue to hold the armature together, but even hot glue is just not strong enough to be able to withstand the weight of this clay. And that was like a beginner thing that I hadn't figured out yet, was how much support was the clay itself going to give to whatever you're building. And the answer is not at all. So you do really need an armature. And I also learned the other reason for building up an armature with the foil is that you don't want a huge, thickly thick clay, model. Very thick clay model is what I'm trying to say. A thickly thick clay model, only because you're going to have to bake it for a much longer period of time. You also get uneven baking because, like a lot of things we put in the oven, the outside will cook more than the inside, and then the outside runs a chance of overcooking. And so you only want to bake about 1/4 inch of material at a time, and then add more material, bake that, add more material, and bake that. So building out his basic structure with foil and using that as your thickness rather than clay, makes it much less heavy, keeps it lightweight, also brings down your baking time and keeps it more evenly baking. So I'm hoping that I got all that right with this. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to pull this out of the oven, and then at some point, part of the wing will be falling off, or maybe something didn't quite mesh together and so a part comes off, it's not blended well. These things I don't know, but worst case scenario, I don't care. We've worked way too hard on this. I will super glue this thing back together again. Oh yes, I will. And I will use putty to fill in any cracks. So if he tries to skip out on this project, I got news for you. You're stuck. You're stuck on the wizard tower, so start building up your skills because, it's fighting time soon. So this is how it ended up. I'm going to slide him over to you guys, and I think he's looking pretty good. And I'm going to basically repeat a lot of what we've done on the rest of the dragon, and I'm going to work on his head, and I think it'll be cool doing kind of like a little beard situation on his chin of horns and working it back up to his mouth, and then doing kind of all these horns coming out of his head. But for that, I would like to turn myself in ways that will make it very impossible for you guys to see what's going on. So Whew, this was a session, guys. I think we nailed it, though. I mean, look at all this work we got done. Just us, right? So, as always, thank you so much for joining, and especially, guys, thanks for your support, because it is because of you guys that we do these amazing things and that we do our cool public streams for everybody to join and everybody to enjoy as well. And I super enjoy them because I learn a ton, like spider knees. I've learned spider knees this week. Who would have thought, or thunk, or however it is you say it. So, guys, have an amazing rest of the weekend, and stay tuned on Discord is the best way to find out when I post those behind the scenes streams. Those are kind of tough to schedule way in advance because they just like, oh, I got an hour or two here, boom, let's stream. So I try and let you know a day before, at least the day of, but you should all be getting notifications from Discord, those of you that have signed up. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? Come on, get on Discord. That's where we're figuring out spider knees, horns, all kinds of techniques together. So, like I said, rock on and get on Discord. See you guys!